President Biden gives an interview with 60 Minutes last night. And we'll get to immigration in a second. He was not asked about the crisis at the southern border. It didn't come up. Didn't think that was important. But he did declare the pandemic is over, which was music to my ears because I've been listening to their denialism on this for quite some time. And finally, he said it. Here it is for those who need to hear it as well. Satwan.
Mr. President, first Detroit Auto Show in 3 years.
Yeah.
Is the pandemic over?
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over.
It's over. He said it. Now the White House aides are reportedly trying to push back. But this has all sorts of implications, Victor. And I, for one, am so glad that he was walked into it by Scott Pelley, whether Scott Pelley expected that or not.
Yeah, I am too. And this is an issue that's very dear to his base, as you know, Megyn. His base, the swing suburban voter or the solidly left-wing voter, is dedicated to a perennial plague and a nonstop COVID because they like the idea of government control. They like the idea that they are the model citizens and everybody else are renegades and don't follow the rules. And Joe Biden did this, remember, when he was inaugurated. He bought into the idea that the Trump vaccinations were going to be bulletproof. It was all over. He announced, I think it was in January, the last week in January, he said that by July we would all have a normal July 4th. And you can't really predict this COVID. Nobody knows. We don't know anything about these new shots for these two new Omicron variants. It's pretty scary when they say the shot's going to have a double whammy. It's going to be really two shots in one when a lot of people had reactions to the first two and the boosters. So it's all up in the air, but I don't know why he had to say that because his voter is the one that has been insisting that schools have to be locked down, the country has to be locked down because COVID is going to be with us forever. And for him to just breezily dismiss it, I think his handlers are pretty upset about it.
Okay, so yeah, exactly. So now the White House is upset. Apparently the aides are upset about his admission on COVID because there are a lot of policies in place that depend on the pandemic not being over, right? This student quote debt forgiveness,
now,
right?
A renter's going to have to pay his rent. A student might have to pay his bills. So there's a whole series of obligations and contractual arrangements that were all suspended because of the supposed COVID-bubonic plague that was never going to leave. And we were in a state of crisis, which they liked. And remember, Megyn, it was everybody from Gavin Newsom that said during COVID, we have to have a new progressive capitalism. And Hillary said, we can't waste this crisis. We have to really go for single payer healthcare. So a lot of the left's strategic planning was based on using the COVID pandemic as a cover to really enlarge government and take away freedoms and turn them over to the select group of platonic guardians. And for him just to lightly say something like that, it's like, wow, we don't have an excuse anymore to coerce people to a particular way of thinking.
Exactly. So it does have potential implications on this, quote, student debt forgiveness program, which was explicitly based, at least one of the main rationales was that we're in an emergency because we're in a pandemic. So he's just declared that that's not true. And that's going up on legal challenge right now. Not to mention some of these other policies. I mean, just in New York City, they just laid off 850 teachers because they wouldn't get the vaccine mandate because of the emergency.
Yes, and remember Molly Ball in that time, February 2021, gushing essay about how they had changed the voting laws because of COVID, and they used that basically, and this is a person of the left, wrote that Mark Zuckerberg had given $419 million and da-da-da-da, and the net result, she bragged that only 30% of the people showed up on election day. The other 70%, for the first time in history, either voted mail-in or early ballot. And that this, as she gushed, was a windfall for the left. And so, or what are we going to do now when they continue this strategy for 2024? But even for the midterms, are they going to say, you know what, we need more early voting, we need more lax mail-in voting, we need to have private mail drops, we need to have more vote harvesting because of COVID? And now he says it's over with. So maybe we could return back to the pre-2020 voting protocols in which, about 70% showed up on election day. And under Joe Biden, election day has become, and under the COVID scare, it had become a construct. It didn't really mean anything anymore.
That's right.
It really had
And now,
ramifications. Remember, Donald Trump's second debate, 60 million people had already voted. He had a disastrous first debate, but his second debate was pretty good, but it was irrelevant, the way the voting had progressed.
yeah, that's right. We're looking at this in Pennsylvania right now, where Fetterman refuses to have a debate. Maybe he'll have one, but he'll have it at the end of October. Meanwhile, voting will have been underway for almost a month by that point already. Yeah. This is, again, as in the state of Pennsylvania, where they changed the rules on mail-in votes.
They did.
So it's interesting to me because the White House, they're having to walk back what Biden said on Taiwan because they're, again, for the second time, he said we would have boots on the ground in Taiwan if China invaded. And he's already done that, and the White House has already come out and said, no, that's not official policy. Exact same thing happened on 60 Minutes last night with Taiwan. Then he says the thing about the pandemic being over. And today the White House is running around saying, well, that wasn't planned. That wasn't a planned remark. And I said to my team, Victor, this reminds me of the scene in Animal House, which anybody who's got good taste in movies has seen, and this particular moment with John Belushi. Remember this?
Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no!
German? Forget it, he's rolling.
That's the White House staff today.
Yeah, I mean, it was really funny because there was a reason that Barack Obama said, remember, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. And because Obama had carefully cultivated this idea that as a staunch Christian, he did not believe in gay marriage. Remember that? And he said a marriage is between a man and a woman. And he was going to use that all the way to his reelection campaign. And then Joe Biden went before a crowd and said, oh, yeah, gay marriage is fine. And he kind of burst this pseudo veneer of Obama's, and he got angry about it. And Biden did that all the time during the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. So he's reckless. And we had this thing called strategic ambiguity with Taiwan. We never really let the communists know what we would do. We may or may not have boots on the ground. We may or may not have strategic nuclear responses, tactical. We didn't tell them what. And then Biden comes along and basically says that. The only thing that's in our interest, and maybe it will excuse him, they are pretty convinced that he's non compos mentis. So when he says something like that, the Chinese are now huddling and saying, but unfortunately, we can't take him at his word because he doesn't know what he's saying. So maybe they're as confused as we want them to be.
One of our sponsors today is Donors Trust, the principled, tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving. Cancel culture does not just affect comedians and commentators anymore. It also affects everyday, hardworking Americans. How so? It derails their charitable giving. Take Jeannie's story, for example. Jeannie did her charitable giving through one of the big national donor-advised fund providers. That is, until, without a clear reason, it refused to send her charitable donation to a conservative nonprofit. This is happening more and more. She shares her story this way. I'm a conservative. I believe America is great despite her imperfections, and that capitalism brings great good to society rather than government, she said. Earlier this year, I requested another gift from my donor-advised fund, and it was rejected. Jeannie wanted a donor-advised fund that shares her conservative principles, and she found it in Donors Trust, the oldest and largest donor-advised fund committed to limited government, personal responsibility, and free enterprise. Do you want a principled partner helping you support causes close to your heart? If so, consider opening a donor-advised fund with Donors Trust. For more information on how Donors Trust can help you with your charitable giving, visit www.donorstrust, D-O-N-O-R-S, trust.org/MK to receive a free copy of their donor prospectus. That's donorstrust.org/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.